As many kids grew up going to Bible camp or sports camp or maybe just a camp in general, in the summer of 5th grade, I finally had the opportunity to go to camp for the first time. It wasn't a Bible camp or a sports camp like most had experienced. This camp was called Legionville, and it was, you guessed it, a crossing guard camp. On the first day, my mom dropped me off, and she helped me get settled, and we met my counselor, Amy. Amy was amazing. My cabin mates were also all wonderful, and we were told by my counselor on that first day that she was raising money all summer long for a charity. While I couldn't tell you what the charity was, I do remember that she was so passionate about it. She was determined to make a difference. There was a little jar at the entryway of the cabin labeled donations for anyone to drop money into throughout the week, no strings attached. I remember fellow campers dropping money in randomly here and there, and Counselor Amy was so excited at the end of each day when she saw the generosity of the campers. So as camp went on, we spent the week playing fun games and acting silly. It was a week full of swimming, running around, and, of course, learning all about the correct way to hold a flag and help people cross the street. Amy encouraged us through those courses at the Camp Olympics, when we lost at tug of war, and when we were a little nervous for our swim test. Amy was truly there for us. And as the end of the week drew near, we were told that we as a cabin would have a fun party on the last night to celebrate. There'd be glow sticks, a dance party, and we could even vote on what special treat we wanted to have for it. The camp week officially ended on a Saturday morning, and on Friday morning after breakfast, we all went back to the cabin together, and Amy went to check the donations in her collection jar. Imagine her surprise when she found it completely empty. She was heartbroken, mad, and disappointed. We all were. None of us had any idea who stole the money, but because of this turn of events, the cabin party for that last night was canceled. As we went throughout the day with activities and lunch, suddenly so bummed out for so many reasons, we found ourselves at canteen snack time talking about it with fellow campers. We were sad about the news of no party, but we were even more sad at Amy working so hard to collect donations all summer long, only to end up with nothing at the end. After canteen came quiet time in our cabins, where we were allowed to whisper with one another, but we couldn't obviously sprint around or do any crazy activities. So we sat down on our bunks ready for quiet time, and a few cabin mates came up to me and my best friend, and they said quietly that they were pooling their money, their leftover canteen money together and giving it to Amy to try and lift her spirits a little bit. I pulled out what little change I had left, and I looked at it in my hand, and I looked at their unspent dollars, and I pushed the loose coins towards them. I remember wishing that I hadn't spent everything that I had. And as they collected all of the money, they ran excitedly up to Amy to present it to her. I remember Amy being moved by the small amount and gratefully accepted it, giving everyone a big warm hug. However, even though this happened, the party never ended up being back on. As quiet time came to an end, we left the cabin for activity time, somehow feeling a little lighter. And as we chatted with campers from other cabins, we told them what had happened. They quickly became excited for us, saying, "Yay, now you can have your party again." And when we told them that there was still no party that night, they got frustrated for us and said, "But that's not fair." I shrugged, thinking, they're right, it wasn't fair. But then, one of my cabin mates, who had the idea to collect the leftover snack money in the first place, looked at the others and said, "But we didn't collect the leftover money to get the party back. Amy never said, if we raise more money suddenly, I'll give you your party back. We did it because it was generous. It doesn't matter what's fair, it matters what's kind. Amy didn't do anything wrong to us. She's been kind to us this whole week. We still appreciate her." Little 5th grade Diana was honestly blown away by her answer. And while I was still disappointed that there was no party, and still mad at whoever took the money in the first place, my friend was right. We didn't recollect money because Amy told us that if we did, there'd be a party again. We recollected the money because we knew that if we did, that small amount of generosity would lift Amy's spirits a little bit. In our parable today, we hear about Jesus telling the story of a landowner hiring laborers to work in his field. He finds laborers more than 3 separate times throughout the day, and he sends them into his fields to work. And at the end of the day, when they're all called in, he lines them up with whoever worked the least to whoever worked the most, and he gives each one the daily wage. And those that worked away the longest are watching those that worked the least get paid a coin. And they're getting antsy, excitedly waiting for their turn to get paid, thinking that they're going to get an incredible amount, only to be disappointed at the end. They are also handed the same coin, and they're visibly mad about it. The landowner asks why they're upset. He gave them what he said he would, after all. But somehow, this story still doesn't seem quite fair. And honestly, looking at it from an outside perspective, I'd agree, wouldn't you? In what world is it fair for the one who worked the least to get paid the same as the one who worked the most, right? This landowner seems a little stingy, if you ask me. But if we look a little closer, it's quite the opposite. The landowner is actually incredibly generous in this situation, essentially overpaying people that he doesn't have to. The ones recruited first got exactly what they signed up for. There's nothing really unfair about this story. They didn't work to get extra. They worked to get what they had agreed to in the first place. I think in our world today, we are in such a mode of over-consumerism that we often get in this mindset too. And while I do have some questions about how the landowner handled this situation in the first place, for example, why did he line them all up from the least amount of work to the most when he knew he was just going to give them the same amount the whole time? But even so, I'm not too convinced that the landowner did anything wrong here. Every time a new group of workers were brought out, it's not like the ones who were already out in the field were promised double or triple the amount suddenly, right? In fact, I think maybe they were missing the whole point here. While they were mad that the landowner didn't overpay them, there maybe was a deeper lesson to be learned. How amazing would it have been if the workers who had been in the field all day long saw the owner pay everyone the same amount, and they walked away saying, "What a generous master he is." Not only did he not short us the amount that he promised us, but he was so kind-hearted to those others. Not only did he offer us work when we needed it, but he went out and continued to find those who needed a job, inviting them in to work in his fields too. In Colossians chapter 4, verse 1, it says, "Masters, provide your servants with what is right and fair, because you know that you also have a master in heaven." And as you heard, it goes on to talk about all the ways to serve God with your whole heart, through prayer, thanksgiving, and loving your neighbors. And it ended by saying, "Let your conversation always be full of grace." There are a lot of reasons to get mad at someone in today's world. So I wonder, do you ever find your conversations filled with trying to outdo someone else? That the person that you're talking to maybe disagrees with you on something, and you can't quite just let it go, and you almost kind of wish for them to have some mediocrity in their life. Do you think to yourself, "That's not fair. Look at all the things that I've done. They are on the wrong side of things. They shouldn't be given the same hand in life as me, and they definitely shouldn't be getting better things." Something that we always tell our kiddos of the next generation is, be kind, share with one another. And honestly, I'm not so sure that we as adults are that great at sharing. When we see someone else get something that we want, usually, let's be honest, we're filled with a little resentment and frustration and jealousy rather than happiness for that person. And I get it. We live in a world where we are taught to fend for ourselves, and it's really hard to see someone get something that you've also worked so hard for. But if we look at it from a different lens, I wonder, is it usually that it's not fair, or is it that someone is being gracious and usually we're being jealous? I think a lot of the time, it's easiest to identify with those in this parable who have worked all day long but aren't receiving as much as they had assumed. As they watch those down the line get paid before them, yeah, I resonate with those people. But I wonder what it would be like if we put ourselves in the place of those who had only worked for 1 hour and had someone offer such generosity to them when they potentially really needed it. And on that note, I also wonder, have you ever been at a low point in your life and had someone open their arms wide to you, being gracious? Have you ever had someone bring you a meal when you couldn't cook for whatever reason? Or bring you a surprise coffee on a hard day? Or simply sit with you and give you a little extra time and attention as you chatted or cried with them about a hard spot in life that you were going through? I also wonder what it would be like if we put ourselves in the shoes of the landowner. He could have easily kept his money and paid those who worked less a far smaller amount, but he didn't. What would it be like to live with that kind of generosity and open heart, to share with others extra and expect nothing in return for it? I'm not going to lie, I still do wonder what was going on in the landowner's head. I mean, why did he not just do what was fair? Why didn't he pay more to those who had worked so hard all day in the hot sun? Isn't that kind of insulting to them? But then I look at what Jesus was probably trying to teach us with this. God offers us grace and love, and sometimes we fall short. We mess up, or maybe we don't work as hard at something as others do. We go through different seasons in our lives. But whether we're out there working our hardest all day or we're doing our best just for an hour, God offers us the exact same thing: grace, love, forgiveness. And shouldn't we then rejoice that the playing field is even? That the person down the road going through tough times, who might be a little distracted from practicing their faith, is getting the same kind of love and attention from a God who is so generous and open-hearted to us. If I'm being completely honest, I think fifth grade Diana in that story struggled to give her leftover snack money to donate. I'm not proud of it, but I'm pretty sure I was doing the math in my head of how many more giant freezies I could buy with it, or just donating the change in hopes of getting our party back. But when I heard my fellow cabin mates say that they didn't give it back because of expecting the party back, that there was nothing fair about it, it was because it's important to be generous and kind, looking back, I was surprised that someone my age could have such a big heart. I see God directly in them in that story. And if a fifth grader could have such a big heart of generosity, I think that we could probably strive to get there too. Let's share what we have. Let's be happy for others when they also receive something great. And let's live out a life of generosity, not because it's fair, but because it's what God calls us to do.